was built on authenticity, the scars, wrinkles, and wild faces that proved these legends had actually lived. But then something changed. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Axl Rose, Steven Tyler, Ozzy Osbourne, and Billy Idol all seemed to fight the one thing rock stars were supposed to embrace: aging. Some admitted to cosmetic work, others denied everything, but their before and after photos tell a very different story. And the biggest shock? Some transformations became so extreme that fans barely recognized the legends they once knew. These are 20 rock icons whose battles with time changed the way we see rock and roll forever. Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger has never admitted to a single procedure. Not once in 50 years. And that silence is the entire confession. In 1965, when the Rolling Stones exploded onto the world stage, Mick's face was a weapon. High cheekbones carved by genetics and decades of performing. Lips that moved with surgical precision when he sang. A jaw that could cut glass. That face aged naturally through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Fans watched him grow older. Nobody complained. The wrinkles proved he'd lived. Then something shifted. By the late 1990s, Mick's face started looking different. Not older, different. The lines that had framed his jaw began softening. His neck, which should have shown the wear of a man in his 50s, looked impossibly tight. His skin developed a smoothness that didn't match the life he'd lived. Photographs from 1998 compared to 1992 showed undeniable transformation. Not aging. Alteration, fans noticed. They discussed it in forums. They compared photos side by side. And Mick said nothing. He still performed. Still leaped across stages like gravity didn't apply. Still sang like his body was 25 years old. But the face didn't move the way it should have. In certain lights, his expressions looked strained, like his skin was being held in place by invisible hands. The tragedy isn't that Mick got work done. The tragedy is that he didn't need to. His legend was already sealed. His voice was still powerful. His stage presence still commanded rooms. But somewhere, someone convinced him that aging wasn't allowed. That staying young was worth erasing the authenticity that made him matter. By his mid-70s, early 80s, Mick's face became a strange echo. Smooth where it shouldn't be. Tight where it should have been expressive. The rawness got polished. The chaos got controlled. And in that control, something fundamental disappeared. Rock and roll's greatest swagger started looking like someone trying too hard to hold on to a ghost. Keith Richards.
What's in your eyes? I see them flashing.
Keith Richards was supposed to be different. This was the man who laughed at time, who smoked cigarettes like oxygen was a luxury, who aged in real time, visibly, with zero apologies. His face in the 1970s told the story of a man who'd seen every excess rock and roll could offer. By the 1990s, his face was a weathered monument. Lined, carved, undeniable proof of hard living. Then, the transformation began. Nobody expected it from Keith. Of all people. But starting in the early 2000s, his face started getting tighter. His neck, which should have shown serious slack, suddenly looked refreshed. His jawline sharpened in ways that defied his age bracket. His eyes, which should have drooped from decades of sun exposure, looked suddenly alert. Keith never said a word. No admission. No denial. Just kept playing, kept showing up, kept acting like nothing had changed. But the photographs told a different story entirely. The man who built his mythology on authenticity, on aging loud, on refusing to hide, on wearing every drug-fueled night on his face, suddenly looked like he'd been polished for mass consumption. The raw, craggy, absolutely fascinating face that made him a legend started smoothing over, started disappearing into the kind of face you see on men trying desperately to hold on to relevance. What makes Keith's transformation particularly striking is the contradiction. He's spent 5 decades building a brand on anti-image, on being the anti-rock star, on refusing to care what anyone thought about how he looked. But then, he seemed to care deeply, enough to call someone. Some fans argue it was subtle, just good skincare. But comparison photos from 2000 and 1980 tell a different story. Keith didn't just age differently, he altered the trajectory of his aging. And for a man whose entire identity was built on refusal to compromise, that choice meant something. The 80s and 90s birthed a different breed of rock star. Harder, angrier, more visually extreme. And some of them panicked hardest when time started showing. Axl Rose. Axl Rose's face in 1988 was pure controlled chaos, thin, angular, with sharp features that cut through cameras. When he opened his mouth, that face contorted with genuine rage. His expressions were ammunition. The snarl was real. The intensity was lived. He never confirmed anything. No surgeries, no Botox, nothing on record. But his face did the talking. Starting in the 2000s, Axl's face transformed. The hard edges softened. The skin got noticeably smoother, almost waxy. The angularity gave way to something rounder, fuller, different. His eyes, which used to burn with volcanic intensity, started looking frozen, like someone had hit pause and couldn't figure out how to press play again. The firing remained in his voice. His stage presence stayed aggressive. But watching him became strange because his face wasn't matching the performance anymore. His expressions couldn't land the same way when they're locked in place by whatever procedure had been applied. The intensity of his eyes looked trapped behind glass. Fans didn't riot, they mourned. Because what made Axl genuinely terrifying was how much of himself he showed. Every emotion painted across his features in real time. But when that canvas got frozen, the threat dissolved. The danger got neutered, and rock music lost something it couldn't get back. Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler used to be a walking scream. In Aerosmith's heyday, his face was pure expression. Every note lived there. Every breath carried emotion across his features. His lips moved with exaggeration because that's how he sang. His entire face was an instrument. Somewhere along the way, that instrument stopped working the way it should. He never admitted anything. But fans who'd watched him for decades saw the difference immediately. His lips got fuller, but not in a way that looked natural. His cheeks filled out. His forehead stopped moving. His entire face developed a smoothness that contradicted the rawness of his voice. Tyler was supposed to be the guy who wore every emotion. The frontman who made madness into music. But when the face stops moving like that, something fractures. You can still hear the scream, but you can't quite see it anymore. The disconnect between his voice and his expression became uncomfortable to watch. The tragedy is particularly sharp with Tyler because his whole brand was emotional transparency. But transparency got replaced by what looked like cosmetic intervention. And fans weren't angry about aging. They were heartbroken about the erasure of the authenticity that made him matter. Some rock stars built their entire identity around makeup and visual presentation. That created a particular kind of vulnerability to the aging pressure. Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons created an entire character. The demon. The monster. The face that would make teenage fans both terrified and inspired. It wasn't just makeup. It was a philosophy. A commitment to visual extremity. Over decades, Gene's real face, the one beneath the makeup, started changing. He denied it constantly, said he never touched anything. But fans saw the difference. His cheeks got rounder. His skin got smoother. The harsh angles softened into something more polished. The wrinkles that should have deepened with age seemed to disappear. What's particularly interesting about Gene's case is that he could have used the makeup to hide anything. But the makeup sits on top of the face, and when the face beneath the makeup changes that dramatically, the proportions get weird. The makeup design was built for his original bone structure. When that structure altered, something felt off. Fans didn't expect him to stay young, they just expected him to stay real. But when the real started looking manufactured, the demon lost its teeth. The character felt less like a carefully constructed persona and more like someone desperately trying to hold on to an image that was slipping away. Paul Stanley.
Give it all to you in the dark.
Paul Stanley was the face of glam. Literally, Kiss wasn't just a band, it was a corporation, a machine. And Paul was the star child. The warmth, the connection, the one who pulled you in even though he was wearing a massive star on his face. Without the makeup, Paul's real face became the subject, and that's where things got complicated. By the 2000s, Paul's face showed undeniable changes. His cheekbones sat higher than they should have for his age. His skin looked suspiciously smooth. His eyes had a tightness that suggested intervention. He never talked about it, never admitted anything, but the visual evidence was substantial. Paul was always careful with his image, maybe too careful. Maybe when you're the face of a billion-dollar brand, you start believing that your face has to stay frozen at a certain age or the whole empire collapses. So maybe he fought back against time in ways he shouldn't have. The result wasn't catastrophic, but it was noticeable. The warmth diminished slightly. The connection didn't land quite as powerfully. The magic had a filter on it, a layer of plastic between him and the audience. And fans who'd grown up with that warmth noticed its absence immediately. Some rock stars defined themselves through controlled chaos. They were supposed to look wild. They were supposed to look dangerous. What happened when they decided to look controlled instead? David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth in his prime was pure expression. The high kicks, the mile-wide grin, the movements that suggested he'd been injected directly into every nerve ending of his own body. His smile could start riots. It was genuine joy mixed with genuine chaos. His face, when captured in 1984, 1985, 1986, was absolutely alive. It moved constantly. Every emotion broadcast, every gesture amplified by the expressions behind it. Then, something changed. Starting in the late 1990s and continuing into the 2000s, David's face started hardening. His skin pulled tighter, became shinier, developed that peculiar quality of having been worked on. His smile, which used to stretch across his entire face, started looking contained, controlled, like it was being held in place by forces he couldn't quite acknowledge. He never addressed it, never sat down and admitted anything. But the visual difference was stark. The party king who used to radiate pure chaos started looking like he'd been airbrushed into silence. Like the real David was still banging on the glass from inside, but the outside had been sealed. Fans didn't turn on him. They just missed him. Missed the wildness, missed the movement, missed watching a face that was incapable of hiding anything. Tommy Lee.
Trash is in my head, I gotta throw it away. It's alright.
Tommy Lee was chaos with a drum kit. Loud, visible, a beautiful mess. That was his brand. That was his identity. The guy who looked like he'd just rolled out of a bar and directly onto the stage. And that's exactly where he belonged. Over time, Tommy's face got smoother. The rough edges sanded down. The forehead stopped wrinkling. His eyebrows sat higher. His eyes looked constantly surprised. The whole visual package shifted from beautiful disaster to polished performer. He never made official confessions, never did interviews about procedures, but the visual evidence was undeniable. Fans saw the shift and couldn't ignore it. The guy who was never supposed to be clean-cut started looking carefully groomed. The mischief got replaced with wax. The rebellion got quieted. Tommy's case is particularly striking because his whole appeal was that he didn't care how he looked. But then, he seemed to care deeply. Deeply enough to call someone. And in making that call, he erased the very thing that made him unforgettable. Some rock stars made a choice, not just to get work done, but to deny it happened at all, to gaslight their entire fan base while standing on stage looking visibly different. Nikki Sixx. Nikki Sixx built his entire mythology on danger. Dark, sharp, full of stories written in scars. He lived through overdoses, came back from the dead, survived things that should have killed him. That survival was written on his face. The lines, the wear, the lived in quality that was the proof. Then the fire got buried. Nikki never confirmed anything, never stood up and said he had work done. But fans watched his face transform from weathered monument to carefully maintained surface. His forehead stopped moving. His face developed a frozen quality when he smiled, like the danger had been smoothed over by injection and procedure. What's particularly tragic about Nikki's case is that he didn't need to hide anything. He wrote the book on rockstar survival. His legend was sealed. His voice still commanded attention. But somewhere, he started polishing the wreckage. Started erasing the scars that made him matter. He didn't sell out. He didn't fall off. But he did something that felt more damaging. He tried to pretend time hadn't happened. He tried to turn back the clock and erase the proof of his survival. And in doing that, he lost some of the edge that made him genuinely dangerous. Rod Stewart.
There's no one else above you.
Rod Stewart had a voice like sandpaper dipped in honey. Ragged, beautiful, raw, and his face matched that voice. Lined, rugged, full of stories. Every wrinkle told you this was a man who'd lived, actually lived, not performed. Lived, but the stories started to fade. His cheeks filled out. His eyes got tighter. The man who used to sing heartbreak like he invented it started looking like he was hiding the hurt. No announcements, no admissions, just a quiet shift that fans immediately noticed. Rod was always effortless, cool without trying, a little messy, but lately that mess looked manageable. Like someone tried to press pause on time, like someone tried to turn a living icon into a portrait, with glossy edges and softened corners. The voice stayed powerful, the stage presence remained intact, but the face that used to dance through decades of heartbreak became something different. Something too neat. Too silent, like someone turned down the volume on the emotion while they were smoothing out the wrinkles. People didn't scream about it, but they noticed. And in noticing, they felt something shift. The connection that made Rod relatable, the crack, the wear, the lived-in magic that got replaced by something more polished, more distant, less real. Ronnie Wood. Ronnie Wood's face was supposed to be a Rolling Stone map, worn in, carved up, cool without trying. His whole identity was built on imperfection, on the beautiful disaster aesthetic, on looking like you'd just rolled straight out of a bar and onto a stage. Then that map got redrawn. His wrinkles disappeared. His jaw got suspiciously refreshed. His skin became too firm for his age and experience level. He didn't make a fuss about it, didn't admit anything. But fans saw the shift immediately. Ronnie was never supposed to be about polish. He was all instinct, all grit. But when that grit started disappearing from his face, people felt confused. Because he didn't need to fix anything. He was already perfect in his imperfection. The whole point of Ronnie was that he didn't care. He didn't need to care. The music was enough. But then, the face shifted. and the wild boy started looking like he was trying to hold on to something that rock and roll never actually cared about. Neatness, control, perfection. He still plays like a god, still moves like a man half his age, still delivers on stage. But something in his face stopped matching the sound. The wildness got quiet, and fans who'd loved him specifically for that wildness started missing the cracks. The glam metal explosion of the 1980s created a particular aesthetic vulnerability. These guys built entire identities around looking a certain way. So when aging threatened that image, panic set in. Bret Michaels. Bret Michaels was the template, the blueprint for glam metal swagger. Bandana, smirk, the whole package. He looked like a cartoon drawn by a teenager who worshipped guitars and eyeliner. And he embraced it completely. But in the 2000s and 2010s, something shifted. The bandana stayed, the persona stayed, but the face beneath it changed. His forehead stopped moving, his cheeks puffed up, the sharp jaw softened into something more rounded. He watched himself age in reverse, but not in a good way. Not in a natural way. He never listed what he did, never gave interviews about procedures. But fans watched him transform and knew something was happening behind the scenes. The glam metal kid was getting scared of aging. Scared enough to call someone. The tragedy is that Bret didn't need the surgery. He already had the myth. He was the front man who embodied the 80s in a way that transcended most of his peers. But somewhere, he started believing that staying young was more important than staying true. And that's when the face started slipping. He still hits the stage, still sings the hits, still gives the performance. But now fans watch with one eye on the show and one eye on the mask, trying to spot the seams, trying to remember what he used to look like before he got convinced that aging wasn't allowed. The glam never left, but the grit did. And that's what hurts most about Bret's transformation. He didn't just change his face, he changed how fans connected to him. Not because he stopped being a rock star, but because he started looking afraid. Billy Idol. Billy Idol didn't age, he got tighter. His face, once full of punk sneers and snarls, looked vacuum sealed. His trademark lip curl stayed there, but the skin around it became stiff, polished, frozen like a wax figure on display. He never talked about it, never stood in front of a camera and admitted the knives and needles. But he didn't have to. Fans saw it immediately. Billy used to wear every fight on his face, every night out, every heartbreak. The stories were written in the lines and the expressions and the movements, but those stories got scrubbed clean. The fire in his eyes still burns, but it flickers behind features that don't quite move right anymore. He performs like a beast. He owns the stage. But the face doesn't keep up. It stays still while the rest of him rages. And that disconnect lands heavy, because Billy wasn't supposed to fade. He definitely wasn't supposed to freeze. Plastic surgery didn't erase his legacy, but it dimmed it. Like someone turned the volume down on what made him real. The lines, the cracks, the chaos, they were part of the sound. Part of the look. Now fans squint, trying to find the rebel, and he's still there somewhere. But the skin doesn't tell the story anymore. Some rock stars didn't hide it. They stepped up, told the truth, and let the chips fall. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy didn't hide his touch-ups. He talked about them, laughed about them, said he was just keeping up, and somehow that honesty made it worse because it meant he knew. He saw what happened, and he did it anyway. The Prince of Darkness used to look like chaos in human form. Wild hair, wide eyes, a face full of stories and scars. But over time, that face started vanishing. The lines smoothed out. The forehead froze. His smile turned stiff. The fire that used to shoot from his eyes dimmed behind injections and tucks. He joked about it, but the darkness of that joke cut deep, because Ozzy wasn't supposed to change. He was supposed to get darker, weirder, more intense, but instead he got smoother, more controlled, more managed. He didn't need the surgery. His legend was sealed. His voice was still raw, his energy still strange and magnetic. But somewhere, he let the mirror win. He looked in and decided the man staring back wasn't enough. Fans didn't hate him for it. They hurt because the face they grew up with, the one that looked like it had fought 100 demons, was gone. In its place, something softer, weirder, quieter. Ozzy didn't just change how he looked. He changed what we saw when we looked at him. And we've been squinting ever since. Courtney Love.
Kill me, pills.
Courtney Love was never quiet about anything. Not her music, not her life, not her surgery. She admitted to a nose job, hinted at more, called out the industry for its obsession with beauty, and then walked right into the same trap. She used to look raw, vulnerable, unfiltered, like her face was part of the performance. But after the surgeries, something changed. Her features smoothed, her lips plumped, the edge started to dull. She said she did it out of insecurity, said she hated her old nose. And in those moments of honesty, fans didn't judge. They just heard her. Because Courtney was never supposed to chase perfection. She was the chaos that called out the lie. But Hollywood whispers are loud. And the pressure to fix what was never broken is brutal. So she gave in. And the result wasn't horror. It was something worse. Regret. You could hear it in her voice. See it every time she talked about it. The face that once broke the rules now looked like it had been played by them. Courtney didn't ruin herself. She got caught in the same storm she tried to scream against. And when the thunder faded, all that was left was a face that didn't match the fight. Some rock stars' denials were so obviously false that they became part of the story itself. Vince Neil.
In a classroom big and it's a drag. Listening to the teacher rap just in my bag.
Vince Neil didn't hide his touch-ups. He talked about them openly, said he was keeping up. But the face that once fronted Mötley Crüe's madness wasn't the same. Not by miles. It's softer, stiffer, a face that looks like it's trying to remember how to be loud. There were weight swings over the years, hardy scars from living, years of accumulated wear. Then came the repairs, the lift, the tweaks. Botox, whatever was done, it didn't bring back the fire. It just stretched over what was left. Photos don't lie. One decade he looked wild. The next he looked sealed like plastic wrap over a rock star. His jaw changed shape. His eyes stopped crinkling. His expressions lost their punch. Fans didn't rage. They grieved. Because the guy who used to roar into the mic with a crooked smile and sweat-stained hair now looked like a frozen version of the past. He still sings, still tours, but when the spotlight hits him, you see it. That smooth, almost unfamiliar mask. It doesn't scream rock and roll. It whispers, "I'm trying to stay." And that whisper is sadder than any roar. Sebastian Bach. Sebastian Bach used to look like rock and roll carved into marble. The voice, the hair, the smirk. He was every poster on every teenager's wall in the 1980s. But time moved on, and so did his face. Except not in the way you'd expect. He swears he didn't touch it. Says it's just clean living. But fans aren't buying it. His forehead stopped wrinkling. His eyes got wider, not older. His skin stretched just enough to look strange, like it was trying to pretend the years hadn't happened. He still sings like a thunderstorm, still talks like he's never heard the word filter, but his face looks like it's stuck somewhere between then and now, caught in denial and injections. People wanted to see him age because that's what made him real. the fire, the breakdowns, the rise and fall. But instead, they saw a man trying too hard to hold on. Sebastian didn't fall off. He just faded under the pressure to stay pretty. And for a guy who screamed rebellion into every note, that softening hurt. Plastic surgery didn't break him, but it blurred him. And for fans who loved every scar, every mistake, losing that felt like losing a piece of the music too. Some of the most respected musicians in rock history fell into the same trap. Joe Perry. Joe Perry's guitar never lied. Every solo dripped with soul, with pain, with glory, and his face used to match. Lean, jagged, lived in. But somewhere along the way, that map got redrawn, wrinkle by wrinkle. He never talked about it, never claimed the scalpel, but his skin started to tighten. His jaw got too perfect. His eyes looked more alert than a 70-year-old's ever should without help. People noticed. They didn't yell. They just stared and wondered where the grit went. Joe was supposed to wear the years like a badge. He earned every line, every scar. He didn't need to rewind the tape. He needed to let it play. But instead, fans started seeing a face that looked too smooth for the stories it told. He still plays like a god. Still stands side by side with Tyler riff for riff. But the man behind the guitar looks different. Softer. A little less fierce. Plastic surgery didn't silence his guitar, but it dulled the visual punch. The face that used to scream blues now just whispers style. Cool but distant. Toya Wilcox. Toya Wilcox didn't stay quiet about her regrets. She stepped up, told the truth, said she gave in, said she wouldn't do it again. And that honesty hit harder than any confession could. She was electric in the 1980s, bright-eyed, sharp-cheeked, wild-haired. When the pressure came knocking, she opened the door, got the work done. A little here, a little there, enough to change how she saw herself and how the world saw her. The face didn't collapse. It didn't turn monstrous, but it turned unfamiliar. Her expression stopped matching her words. The spark didn't connect the same way. And she felt it. You could hear it in her voice when she looked back. She said it came from insecurity, from being told she wasn't enough. And when you hear that long enough, it gets inside you. So she tried to fix it with needles, with cuts, with promises of staying young. But the fix didn't last, and neither did the illusion. Now Toya stands tall, not because she avoided the knife, but because she faced it, admitted it, and chose to speak up. Most rock stars lie through the mask. She ripped hers off. Here's what the music industry doesn't want you to know. Rock and roll was built on authenticity, on raw nerves and lived experience written into every line of a face. The wrinkles were the proof. The scars were the credential. Every rock star who ever mattered knew this. They built their entire mythology on it. And then, somewhere in the 1990s and 2000s, the pressure changed. Not the music industry's pressure, the mirror's pressure. The voice in your own head that says you're not enough. That aging means irrelevance. That your value has an expiration date. 20 rock legends fell into that trap. Some admitted it. Most didn't. But the photographs don't lie. And neither do the faces. The tragedy isn't that they got older. The tragedy is that they got scared of being older. So scared that they called someone and tried to erase the evidence. They tried to outrun time itself. And in doing that, they lost something far more valuable than wrinkles. They lost the rawness, the authenticity, the lived-in magic that made them matter in the first place. Here's what these 20 taught us. You don't age out of rock and roll. You age into it. Every line tells a story. Every wrinkle is a credential. The scars don't make you less. They make you real. And real is the only thing rock and roll has ever actually cared about. These legends didn't need the knife. They needed permission to stay true, to let the years show, to trust that their music was enough. Their voices were enough. Their legacy was enough. Maybe it's not too late for the next generation to learn that lesson before they make the same choice. If this documentary changed how you see these icons, hit like and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And comment below, which of these transformations shocked you the most? Let's talk about it. This is the conversation rock and roll needs to have. See you in the next one.